So what we'll do is we'll go through a bunch of topics during this, but also we're here to answer your questions. I know it's just 30 minutes, but in the chat, let us know and we'll make it happen. Also, our third, and let's be real, Evan, probably the better of the three of us, Zoe, is on a plane right now, struggling to run to a coffee shop. Somewhere between a plane and a coffee shop. So she may join us, she may not, and we'll try and probably fail to capture the magnificence that is Zoe.
Yeah, it's we're loud. We'll make it happen. We'll make it work. We'll make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, allegedly. You know.
No, we can do it.
You want to kick off? Want me to kick off now?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Evan Patterson. I am the content and community evangelist at Troops. Dan, before I talk too much, would you like to tell us who you are?
I'm Dan. I run community, social media, video, and a couple other things, including our foundation at Chili Piper. And, Evan, you're awesome. I want to say before we talk too much about community, how much just I appreciate you and just your persona and everything you bring to an otherwise often boring, community. People talking about their promotions or all kinds of stuff on LinkedIn, and I just really appreciate you, Evan. You're great.
I love that you're complimenting me on being chaotic, because that's honestly what that just equates to. If anything, even though Dan's complimenting me on those things, a lot of what I do has been learned through observing. I get a lot of inspiration from a lot of people, and Dan's on that list. So yeah. By the way, I'm completely lying. All that's false. Dan's awful. Evan is Dan's ICP. Yes, that is also true. So. This is going to be one hell of a talk. So we're here to talk about community-led growth, not chaos-led growth, which is my personal strategy. But we like to think of this as three umbrella topics of hiring, branding, and then of course pipeline, the one that pays our bills. That'd be kind of nice. So before we dive into all these three topics, we want to talk about what is or what isn't a community. And Dan had a very poetic, Hallmark card worthy definition of this. I think yesterday or the day before we talked about this. I don't know if you wrote it down, but let us know what the definition was.
Well, I'm glad the expectations are set low for this definition. Yeah, so a little bit about me. Pretty much every major B2B community out there, I've been in touch with their founders, giving them advice, helping them scale. Because at Chili Piper, we love communities. In the past, I was the general manager of a community called Modern Sales Pros, where I scaled that community from 1,000 to 14,000 members and then monetized it, brought in a little over 2 million revenue with the purpose of that money to scale the benefits we brought to our memberships. And Chili Piper was the first sponsor ever to Rev Genius. So it's just amazing to see this community grow, and we're all about it. But there are communities, right, that aren't communities. So I think the definition I gave Evan was that a community is a space where there's an exchange of knowledge between people whose job is not to exchange that knowledge. Like, I'm not going to call out any softwares in particular, but there are a couple who you go to their community and it's basically someone asking a question about a feature and then an employee of that company replying. That's not a community. That's a message board. Evan, what other kind of communities out there do you know of that aren't communities?
I think it's kind of, you see this a lot on Twitter, where like Twitter has replaced like the customer support ticket function for a lot of businesses, both in B2B and in D2C. And it's just like, this is a community because we're responding to inquiries, or we're just engaging with every single person who talks about how much they love our product. And a community should be customer to customer, or customer to prospect, or prospect to customer. It should actually have next to nothing to do with your employees. The employees are just kind of there to like kickstart it and facilitate it and make that possible, not actually doing the execution of those conversations. Yeah, they're there to chime in when it makes sense to, but not like replace your support system. I think you hit it right on the head. Usually a false community is just a social media facing support team. That's really what it is.
Yeah, and that's some advice I'd give folks. If you're thinking about your community-led growth motion, who you're hiring for this role, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I was asked once, like, we need to hire someone who has the answers to all the questions. But no, what you want is someone who can facilitate other people exchanging information. So there are a couple really simple metrics you can use to tell if a community is real or not. One is the unique posters per month, right? Is all the activity generated by one person? If so, maybe it's not a community, right? Maybe it's just their second LinkedIn feed, right? Another one is, what are the responses per thread, right? How many, when a question's asked, how many people can respond per thread? A third really great metric there is going to be the unique responders per thread. And then a fourth one is, how many times does someone ask a question that doesn't get an answer from someone who's a member of the community, right? Because if every time someone asks a question and then it's answered by the same person, that's not a community. That's like an AMA built into a forum, right?
Yeah.
So as you're scaling your community, you're focused on community-led growth, focus on those 4 metrics for your own community, but also maybe stay away and don't sponsor those communities that are just like some guys, megaphone, right?
Yeah. I think another way to look at it is just like creating raving fans that just can't shut up about you because they love what you do that much. That's how I look at it. I come from the B2C world, so that's probably why I phrase it that way. I want people to be obsessed with it. I talk about Chili Piper way too much. Why? Because I love what they do. That's it. Like, it's simple. It's just as simple as that. Dan talks about Trips Never.
I love Troops. I actually
we were using our G2. I'm kidding.
We were back at Atrium. We were Troops customers, and we're Troops customers now at Chili Piper. So we love Troops.
Yeah, I love Troops.
But yeah, I see in the commentary, like some communities being called out because they have unanswered questions. And I would say that, like, if you're the community manager of those communities, the answer is not to answer those questions. It's to look into, like, why are people not organically answering those questions, right?
Yeah.
And it really varies based on a lot of stuff. But like, one last thing, and I'm like, oh, there are only 4 things. But another really great indicator of a community, if it's strong, is going to be the ratio of valuable content to low signal stuff. Like, you get 1,000 comments and then 900 of them are, oh my God, great. Then that's probably not going to be valuable. You shouldn't have to sift through a community to find value. That's part of the reason I love RevGenius, right? I know I can comment on something. I'll get really awesome feedback on it. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about that. Kate, we love you, Kate. Shots fired. It's true. Kate's amazing. I think Kate manages the RevGenius book club, right? So it's like, if you have people engaging with each other, connecting on a deeper level, that's a sign of a healthy community there. So Evan, what do you say? Should we go on to the next phase, or want to keep the community roast going?
I'm sure we can roast as we go. I'm sure we'll find a way to insult somebody here.
Feel free to roast in the comments as well. It's
totally fine. Yeah, we'll just blame Dan for any potential slander or defamation.
Yeah.
When it comes to like running this, as Dan mentioned, the person has to understand these things pretty inherently, or they have to be able to catch up to these concepts pretty quickly. So this is really important when it comes to hiring plans. Community has 2 benefits on hiring. One, it can help you attract talent and find talent through, as Zoe put it in a previous conversation, pre-vetted candidates. You kind of already understand how these people walk, talk, and think before you even meet with them. I can speak firsthand, given what I don't know how Dan got his job at Chili Piper. You definitely add on to this, but I got poached quite literally from my previous employer to Troops because Scott saw what I was doing on LinkedIn and with other groups that I was a part of at the time outside of RevGenius, and clearly could understand that I understood the power of community and social media and how these things interact and what is a community and what isn't a community. Even though I was at a level of my career at that point where I couldn't quite articulate it, in the time that I've been here, I've been able to articulate it because I didn't realize I was already doing these things and I had names for them. So that worked in Troops' favor when they found me because they could tell I could get it. They just didn't know I knew how to talk about it yet. Dan, how did you have a similar story where you kind of fell into it because you exemplified that you understood it?
Yeah. So just to frame this kind of topic a little more broadly first, now that we've told you, like, what is a community, what isn't a community, we want to spend the rest of the time diving super deep into the benefits of community. Because when you're like community-led growth, it means a lot more than just sourcing pipeline from these communities. Like, you can get feedback on your product. You can find beta users. You can hire people. And that's what we'll get into in a second. But also you can build evangelists. You can build fans. You can increase the awareness of future product releases, all kinds of
Marketing
amazing stuff. And then what I'll also say, and we'll get into this too as well, is that if you are working for someone who's like, show me the deets, like why doesn't all the community stuff show up in Salesforce in my community attributed revenue column, right? Then they're probably not viewing community the right way. Because if you build a relationship in a community and you just get someone to love your product, the right answer there isn't to be like, great. And whenever you mention in passing, please send this UTM that brings it back to whatever. The right answer is just to let them be themselves and empower them. So a
Yeah.
lot of the benefits of community, if you start scaling that, will actually probably show up as unattributed direct traffic to your website, or they'll show up in some cases, if you're taking ad spend against your own keywords, as like paid revenue by cost per click ads on a direct search of your company name. And when you see that increasing alongside your community benefits, that's sometimes how you can get it. But then the question is like, twofold within this first talent bucket. It's like, how do you find talent from communities, and how do you hire the right person to
Yep.
run these communities? So Evan, after that long-winded blah blah blah, to answer your question, so my background's in politics, actually. So I worked for Bernie, I worked for Hillary, I worked for Bernie again. Finally, I won when working for Joe Biden. Sorry, it didn't happen earlier, everybody. Mostly
Yeah.
everybody, I suppose.
The
But
crack.
I met Nicolas actually when I was the community manager, turned general manager of Modern Sales Pros. I met him at he's the founder of Chili Piper. We're like an inbound revenue suite where we'll double conversion rates for most of our customers by allowing them to just book a meeting with the correct rep right on your website.
I can confirm
Um,
it's true.
so what was nice for me is it was my involvement in community that connected me with all these people for future roles, right? So that's another really great benefit from a user perspective. If you're in a community, then you know the people who are either hiring now or will someday be hiring. But
Yeah.
then, Evan, what do you think is the ideal profile for the person who should run this community?
A strong sense of communication skills, and I don't mean that in just like the how to communicate with like a customer. I just mean in just generally being able to build relationships quickly and be able to maintain relationships at scale and doing all and just keep growing. They don't ever hit like a ceiling of relationships. You want to find people that clearly can't meet enough people that are like hungry to meet more people. I think that level of passion for relationships will translate to their work very well, even if they're not the ones building the relationship. The people who know how to build relationships themselves usually know how to facilitate and create environments that enable others to build relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes communities work, is when you can make it easy for other people to meet. I like to, it's going to sound really stupid, but I like to compare it to like a bar or a party. We've all been to the bar or the party where you only talk to the people you already know, but a really good bar or party encourages you and makes you feel safe and comfortable talking to everybody else there, and not the bartender and not the three people you walked in with. So
Mm-hmm.
that a community should be something that encourages you inherently, without even being aware that it's encouraging you, to meet other people. So I'm not saying do that stupid thing in high school where it's like everybody stand up and introduce themselves and give us a fun fact and half of us roll our eyes and want to pass out. That's not what I'm talking about. I just mean creating this environment or energy that rewards that kind of behavior. That's what a community really is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
that helps. Yeah, that's how I look at it. Some hard technical skills, I would say, because that's more like a soft thing, is like they have to be good writers. That's usually one thing. Social media
Mm-hmm.
savvy, particularly on the platforms that you know your ICP is on. Being able to walk and talk the talk of the geographical regions you're selling into, the industries you're selling into, the job titles you're selling into. They're not doing the selling, but if they can't, even if they don't have that job title, they have to be able to talk like those people.
Mm-hmm.
And because if they can't talk like them, they can't understand them, so they can't create this whole thing that we just spoke about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't have too much to add there, but I would just say if you're interviewing someone for a role to run your own community, ask them some of the hypotheticals we've brought down, right? Hey, someone asked a question to your community and there's no responses. What's your next step? The people who understand community know it's not about placing yourself in the critical path of responses. It's about creating a culture within the community that empowers others. And if they don't
Yeah.
get that, maybe you can train them for it. but you really want people who understand that intuitively, or at the very least, before the interview, have done enough research to realize how to do it right. Evan,
Yeah.
should we move on to the next topic?
Yeah, well, definitely. Let's talk about brand. There's the intro.
Brand.
I told you.
You delivered exactly as you said you promised.
Let's talk about brand.
Yeah. So this is one thing that I think Chili Piper has done a really great job of in communities. What we've done less of a good job on is putting the metrics harnesses in place to track it, but we're pretty sure it's working. At least our community team's taking credit for it. So a question I have for you is is community just based in these communities, or is community the relationships that you're building across your client base and how they're engaging with you? Evan, what do you think?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I know it's probably not the answer some people expected, but I think it's equal parts both. I also think the answer changes its weight on which side of the balance you're looking at, depending on what context you're talking about and what your goal is with community. Because like we just said, there's multiple goals for community, so the answer to that question is going to change based off what context of the goal you're talking about.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So I'll pull back the curtain a little bit on some of Chili Piper's brand strategy when it comes to communities. So the first thing we've done is we've identified all the communities that are relevant to us, like Rev Genius and a bunch of others. We don't need to get into them now. Rev Genius is the best. But once you've identified who your buying committee is, then you look at the personas in that community, if your goal is pipeline and brand, and then you try and engage with those communities, right? If your goal is hiring, then you want to look who are the people you're trying to hire, where are they hanging out? And if you're a sales development rep or an AE or pretty much any go-to-market function, you're watching this right now, for the love of God, apply to Chili Piper. We love community. We are Rev Genius's first sponsor.
Swipe them from Troops. I'm kidding. We're not even hiring for those roles right now, so I can't even pick them.
We were the first sponsor to Rev Genius. We get it. But basically, after
I was the loudest person to ever join Rev Genius.
You still are. So after you figured out what communities are right for you, you want to try and create a feedback loop around your brand. Maybe you have a social listening tool. Maybe you pay an Upworker to go check it out. Maybe the founders who you're sponsoring with will alert you because they're moderating every thread, right? And they're like, this is a thread relevant to Chili Piper. Then ideally, you should have a good enough relationship with your customers within that community who you've pre-identified so that loop should be closed organically. Someone's like, hey, I'm trying to increase conversion on inbound leads. 10 people from Chili Piper jump up and say, not Chili Piper employees, of course, Chili Piper customers who are happy, they jump up and organically say something. Then the way you really capitalize on that brand is creating a closed loop, right? Yep. So whenever anybody says great stuff about us in a community, Evan, what do you think Chili Piper does? Take a guess. It's topical.
Hot sauce.
Yeah, we send them a hot sauce. And we thank them and we reach out and we get their feedback because we genuinely want that. But you don't have to pay people. We're sending you hot sauce.
I know.
It's like the Jedi. These aren't the drones you're looking for, and then you're like, okay, I'm happy again. We're sending you.
No, I'm just gonna bother you until the day you get fed up with me asking you about it.
Yeah,
but we follow a similar
on LinkedIn. We love that.
We follow the same idea here at Troop. We do something very similar. We do it at a smaller scale because we are a much smaller company. But we Troops were a workflow automation company, so we connect all your go-to-market softwares and put them together. But the point being, still, we follow and partner with companies that solve tangential issues, not the same issues, but that actually kind of helps us with that keeping up with the Joneses effect, which is a really good fuel to the fire for building communities. If another company has a strong community, we can grow our community faster by making ourselves as part of their community and working with them. It's actually why Chili Piper makes a lot of sense for Troops. I've been talking to a lot of other companies, and if you want to talk to me, let me know. But we partner with companies that have these, they just inherently get it just like a person would. So that way, when they're talking about maybe something their product lacks in, like the product takes you only so far, and then somebody goes, well, we finished that up with Troops, somebody responds to that other person's post, that's when Troops does a similar strategy. We don't send hot sauce because that doesn't make sense for Troops to send hot sauce. But we also engage and we make friends with these people, send them some swag or something to get them to remind them that like we exist and we're here, you know, and we see you talking about us and we love that you're talking about us. And Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, we're usually talking about the person that's answering the question, not the person asking the question. And I think that's what a lot of people don't get.
Yeah, I'd say it varies, but for the most part, yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, that's who we go after.
Yeah, for the most part, it's like when someone says something nice on your brand, they should know that the company that they support is gonna drive awareness towards that post. So that'll help them from their like social posting perspective or help their brand within the community. And they're gonna know that we take that seriously and that we listen.
Yep.
And I think that's another thing that like people really want to be listened to, right? So if you're commenting in a community about your perception of a software or of a tool or of a space or of a category or of a tactic, and then that company goes in there and asks you to learn more because they genuinely want to learn more, because you're in a community, because you want to learn and share experience, then you're going to ultimately build a closer relationship with those folks. In that you're creating external brand kind of affinity points, and then those will fly throughout the world, right? And no, they're not going to show up in Sprout Social necessarily. They're not going to show up in your Salesforce report, but they will show up in your brand, and they will show up in the web traffic to your website, the number of people who Google you, the amount of unattributed revenue that you have on the marketing team that you're just not sure where exactly it came from.
You're going to have patience.
Yeah. And that's what I would challenge you if you're having a difficult time getting buy-in from your like CEO or your CMO. I would say like when someone Googles Chili Piper and then they click on the ad at the top, it's not that demand gen is working. What caused them to Google Chili Piper in the first place? And then once you can build up a causality between maybe something that happened on social, something happened on a community, some event you made a splash at, where the follow-up from them isn't to reply to your email, even though you email them multiple times after the event and you're like, hey, you watched Dan, Evan, and Zoe's community-led growth thing. Like, let's chat. Like a lot of times their curiosity will be piqued in a different way. They'll take their own buyer path to educate themselves. So that's a cool thing. And I would make sure, check the communities that your buying committee is in and make sure that, you know, you're not getting outshined by your competitors, because one community is not enough. You need to be across all of them. So we've got just a couple of minutes left in the chat. Feel free to ask questions if you want, but I say we move on to that last
pipeline.
Pipeline.
That paycheck paying one. Yeah.
I
like this one.
Yeah. So
Chili Piper is all things pipeline. So, you know, I can speak to the community aspects from a different perspective, but I think most people here are going to be like, well, Chili Piper is the expert when it comes to pipeline. So as the community person working at the pipeline expert company, I think you should open it off.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because the way, you know, why you say, Evan, that we're the pipeline company is like, let's say you're getting 100. Yeah, I mean, let's say you're getting 100 inbound leads and they're converting at like 10%. On average with our tool, you'll double that or more. So, you know, 100 inbound leads will become 20 MQLs instead of 10, or they'll become 50 instead of 30, right?
Once again, can you confirm if you use the tool, it does work?
But
and then when you're updating your opportunity, that's when you use Troops, just so you know. You know.
Yeah. But what's interesting from a pipeline perspective in community is that you can do it as well. So there are a couple different ways to do it. Let's start with events, right? So let's assuming that you are inbound. I think it's a joke.
Thanks for the sarcasm. Continue.
I was like, what are inbound leads? All right. Well, educate the buyer. Just kidding. That was a joke. So like, let's assume I'm sponsoring a Rev Genius event, right? And I'm like, hey, I want to sponsor this event. I want 100 attendees. Here's the topic. And the topic's going to appeal to like marketing operations folks, right? I can look at the size of those companies and the projected number of people from past webinar registration lists. And I can project a total addressable market for that event alone, meaning that the total value of the potential pipeline from the buyers just present watching that event is equal to X. Right?
Yep.
And I can extrapolate that based off past webinar performance, looking at those lists. Then all I have to do is think, what percentage of the people from that webinar can I get in touch with? multiply that by your win rate, multiply that by your average contract value. And there you go. An easy way to clearly articulate pipeline from community events. And the best part, you don't have to put those events on yourself, right? That's field marketing as a service. So that's one way you can look at pipeline from community events. RevGenius does this great. Modern Sales Pros, when they had in-person events, it was amazing. Those events were incredible. There was so much pipeline from each of them. And there are a bunch of other ways to do that. So that's one way you can do that. Evan, you got another way you generate we're generating pipeline from community?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that whoever's running your community marketing or community strategy, aligned them with your outbound sales team, such your SDR team and your BDR team. If you know anything about my social selling strategies that I talk way too much about and probably need to shut up about, is that you can use all these conversations, whether it's posts that you all are making or your partners are making or employees are making, or posts that are like, hey, I'm comparing, this tool to Troops, or I'm comparing this, I'm having problems with this tool doesn't work well with my team. They keep forgetting to use it. And then seeing somebody comment that's a customer of yours saying you should try Troops, thanks, it solves that issue. Making your outbound sales team or BDR, SDR sales team aware of these events that are going on in your community, they can interject and they can take advantage of those conversations for your pipeline. They can be proactive. When I was an SDR at Reprise, I very often sourced my leads based off conversations. If you're unfamiliar with the concept of social listening is just kind of how you do lead gen for social selling from an SDR's perspective, not from a marketer's perspective. So I would look for those conversations that were happening and go, well, it's funny that you mentioned X and you talked about it with insert person here from one of our customer companies here. I would love to continue this conversation with you and let you know more about what they were talking about and why they love it. And I can tell you with facts and with stats that 90% of the time they were like, yeah, sure, why not? Because at that moment, the point is it's somebody falling down, breaking their leg, saying, please help me. And you're just offering them a cast and some medicine. It's the warmest cold outbound possible in that moment. So if you can align community with SDRs, which I think me and Dan could do a 6-hour TED Talk on, that is a really good way to go outbound with it, where community does a lot with inbound.
Evan, it might be a 6-hour debate, actually, because I would posit that the average sales development rep, while amazing in so many ways and less properly trained, will botch that conversation 9 out of 10 times. And I wasn't planning on any slide decks or anything, but I'm going to share my screen really briefly.
You got to pay and train your SDRs better then, because then they won't look at that.
The 3 cardinal sins of peer-to-peer community. Giving your SDRs access to the community. That's one of the things that I put there. I don't agree
at all.
I know. Pitching your own product to the community and hijacking conversations to support your company. So I knew that this was going to be. So instead, what I would suggest is you incentivize your customers to participate. Create a tight social listening mechanism to identify where love is needed, showcase and support the community and its founders, and provide value. I would add a 5th, which is kind of what you said. But it's like, if someone's out there being like, hey, what's the best cadence tool? They don't want to hear an outreach SDR reach out.
Oh yeah, no, don't do that.
It's me. I'm the best. So there's a subtle way. Before you do this, anybody listen to Evan's social selling philosophy. I don't think you said that. I just think you're so much more talented than all these other folks, where they need to like learn from you and be mentored by you before they can do it.
Oh yeah, if Joe Schmo goes, I need a calendar tool, and I go, you should talk to Chili Piper, that's when an SDR should jump in, is after I've already won up Chili Piper. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. That one. Oh, I'm here to fight. We got 28 seconds left. So, Evan, I just want to say, I think you're amazing, and I've certainly learned a lot from you. Zoe, I know you're not here, but the thought of you running to a coffee shop after getting off a plane to be in this is pretty hilarious. And I'm sad that we missed all your amazing knowledge. Zoe's incredible. Evan, thank you so much. RevGenius, thank you so much. Apply to Chili Piper. Evan, what do you got?
I mean, follow me on LinkedIn, and I would say apply, but we're not hiring right now.
All right, is that it? Are we still live?
I don't know. Are we?
Can we go over?
Are we still here, Tom?
But Evan, I think that the way you do it is truly masterful. I really do. And a lot of folks have a lot to learn from it.
I just think the training sucks.
Yeah. I think you're right.
That's why I don't like saying don't do it, because don't do it just reinforces shit training. In my opinion.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough.
If we act like it's not possible, it will never become possible.
It looks like we're still live. Right?
I know. I can't tell. If we're still live.
Well, let's take some questions then. Anyone have any questions?
It depends on the product. Like, okay, I'm going to say this in the nicest way possible, Amir, but that's implied in every conversation ever, anywhere. All right, I'm hopping out now, apparently.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, RevCon.